Welcome, everyone. My name is Tom Halleck from Mountain Lake PBS, and it is great to be here with everyone for our second Women in Local Politics Forum. The last one was in 2019. We took a few years off and decided to come back. And so, like so many other things, it's nice to be back and have these in person again. It is a wonderful pleasure to introduce John Kowal, the president of Clinton Community College, who is here to say a few words. We appreciate you letting us be here and enjoy the wonderful theater tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Tom. And on behalf of all of my colleagues and friends at Clinton Community College, welcome to our event today. We take a lot of pride in our governance center here at Clinton Community College, and I'm thrilled that we're going to hear from three political leaders here today, hear their stories, and have some really cool conversations. So, but I would also like to thank several individuals. This event was here primarily because of two committees we have on campus, our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. Chris Chamars is the chair of that committee, and our Cultural Affairs Committee, Tom Manival is the chair of that, and also involvement of the Governance Center. So we take pride in the events that we are able to sponsor here, and I'm just, again, thrilled that you're all here. And I'm looking forward to a real, exciting, interesting evening. So, again, thanks for being here with us.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Thanks for the hospitality. So as I mentioned, I'm Tom Halleck, Mountain Lake PBS. I am happy to be here as the moderator of what's going to be, as Dr. Kowal just said, an evening full of great conversation, discussion, and I'm sure from these wonderful guests here tonight, some insight. I am honored to be joined by these three distinguished women who are dedicated public servants with careers in politics and community service. And we thank you and our audience for coming and being part of this forum. In fact, we really want tonight's discussion to be driven by your questions. So please feel free to stand up and ask the question or fill out the card. Before we get started, though, we had hoped that former Assemblywoman Janet Dupree, who served 5 terms in the New York State Assembly and was longtime Clinton County Treasurer and a Clinton County legislator, would be able to join us as well. This whole forum was Janet's idea, along with Tom Mandeville here at Clinton Community College. We had a wonderful time here, a great discussion in May of 2019 when we held the very first Women in Local Politics Forum. Unfortunately, with the pandemic, like so many things, it had to be put on hold for these past 3 years, but we are back. We had hoped that Janet would be able to be here with us, but she had to undergo some eye surgery a couple of weeks ago, and so she isn't able to be here with us this evening, although she very much wanted to be. She is recovering. She is optimistic that she'll be, in the coming weeks, making a full recovery and be able to continue to volunteer as Director of Flight Operations for the North Country Honor Flight, which is the endeavor that she so loves now and is near and dear to her heart. We send her our best wishes. We hope that she'll be able to join us here at this event again next year. And we are so honored tonight that her daughter Michelle Timmons and her husband Rob, who is a Clinton County legislator, are both here tonight. We asked them to come to accept a special honor for Janet. We are going to surprise her now, and I'm doing it on video for Janet to watch. We are going to present her with an award recognizing her amazing, distinguished career in public office for 41 years. So we would still very much like to give Janet this award with our thanks for dedicating her life to public service. And let me read it for you right now. From Clinton Community College, State University of New York, Clinton Community College Center for Governance recognizes Janet Dupree for her decades of exemplary community service, advocacy, and leadership in the public sector. Congratulations to Janet. Michelle will come up and receive it. This will hang in the alumni cottage, and every year, or a similar one will hang, and this will go to Janet, and then another one will hang in the alumni cottage, and every year a name will be added to it in honor of Janet and inspiring generations of people to run for public office. So, Michelle, thank you. Robbie, thank you for being here.
She will greatly appreciate it.
And we will look forward to having her back here next year.
She's looking forward to it also.
Great. And we'll look forward to seeing her at the next honor flight, if we hope.
Yes, we hope so.
Great. Thank you so much for coming. Janet joked with me on the phone. She said, "You know, I'm the only Republican. I'm the token Republican, and now your forum's not going to have one." So we so appreciate her, and we look forward to seeing her. As I mentioned, she's the Director of Flight Operations for the North Country Honor Flight, and you'll see her at the Oval bright and early Saturday mornings for the send-offs. And if you've never been to one of those, please come. They are amazing. You will love them. Well, let's continue with our discussion now and our honored guests. So why don't we hold our applause until we have introduced everybody. It is my pleasure now to welcome Sarah Rowden, who grew up in Illinois, and then with her husband's career as an Air Force pilot, lived in military communities across the country. Sarah taught phys ed in a very poor Mexican border town. She worked in migrant education. And then when they arrived in Plattsburgh in 1972, she was hired by Clinton Community College to teach reading and grammar to airmen preparing to take their GED. She then joined the faculty of Clinton Community College. In 1992, when they came back after a 3-year trip, somewhere, you were in the Midwest for 3 years, right? Omaha. Sarah took the position of Associate Executive Director for the Northern New York Center, now BHSN, and then moved to the Executive Director position at Champlain Valley Family Center until 1999. Then her career in politics began when she was elected to the Clinton County Legislature and served from 2000 until 2013, with a brief return in 2016 for 6 months to fill a vacant seat. She is now retired, loves snowboarding, and singing with the Booby Sisters, which is a well-known group of breast cancer survivors. I'm sure all of you know. Sarah, welcome. Nice to have you here.
Thank you.
We are also pleased to welcome 2 women who are active in politics right now. Patty Waldron is a Clinton County legislator representing Area 6. You live in the town of Saranac.
I do.
She is well known as the owner of the Coffee Cat in downtown Plattsburgh, a wonderful coffee shop which you operated for 25 years. Fantastic, until you retired last fall and you sold the shop to your son. He's carrying on the business now for you. And prior to that, Patty worked as a dental assistant for 10 years at Clinton Correctional Facility in Dannemora. And you have now been a member of the Clinton County Legislature for 10 years. And we welcome you. Thank you for coming tonight. And we are also pleased to be joined by Barb Heber, who is a town councilor in Plattsburgh. Like Sarah, the Air Force brought Barb to Plattsburgh. Her father did 2 tours of duty here at Plattsburgh Air Force Base. Barb graduated from SUNY Plattsburgh with a degree in psychology, a minor in business, then got your master's degree in administration and leadership. Barb worked in human resources at SUNY Plattsburgh, at Wyeth, Homeland Security, a company that worked for Homeland Security, and director of HR here at Clinton Community College. Your career also included work as a financial service rep and advisor, and also a licensed life insurance agent. Barb remains connected here to Clinton, now serving on the Foundation Board of Directors. We have a lot of connections here, Dr. Cole, to Clinton. It's a good thing we held it here. Barb got into politics running for an open seat on the town council in 2016. When Michael Cashman gave up his seat to run for town supervisor, and she has now served on the town board for 7 years. Barb, welcome, and all of you, thank you for being here tonight and joining us for the event. Ladies and gentlemen, as we mentioned, tonight will be about you folks getting involved in the discussion, asking questions of our guests who have had distinguished careers in politics, but we'll talk freely tonight about the joys of public service, but also the challenges they have faced, the hurdles, the sexism, the discrimination, and how they have taken on and overcome those obstacles. We'll discuss those accomplishments as well as the challenges that remain today for women in local politics. We'd like to get your questions and comments ready. We'll come to you and ask you to ask those in just a moment. But first, now that we've had the introductions, why don't we invite each of our guests to say a few words and we'll get this thing going. Welcome. Why don't we go right down the line? Barb, we'll start with you.
Sure. Can everybody hear me? Okay, good. The uniqueness about coming into public service in the town of Plattsburgh was it all started with an informal visit from our now supervisor, Michael Cashman. So just stopping by to introduce himself. I was having dinner with somebody. And then eventually that led to another conversation where he actually was, I think, vetting other women to perhaps take his position if he was elected as supervisor of the town of Plattsburgh. And that led to some more conversations. And what I'm saying is the uniqueness of this is that if we're going to talk about any barriers that women may have when they're considering a chance to run for office or campaign for office, there are times where you just need to plunge in. And Michael had approached me, and I think with an analytical mind, sometimes you try to dissect every deliberation and every point. So we all have barriers to making our thoughts come out in terms of whether we want to run or not. So they could be motivational barriers, they could be psychological barriers. Do you think you're uninterested? I check that off. No, I'm interested. Are you unwilling? No, I'm willing. Are you uncertain? Well, that's where you kind of toy with the struggle, but then I decided to check that off and say, the question isn't why, and you start looking at your confidence level if you should run or do this, but it was more why not. So I think that was just, and sometimes I think sometimes our male counterparts, and it's not a gender-based opinion here, it's just that sometimes they can maybe take the risks or they can rush in, and just, so I decided just to jump in. I think that's accurate, Supervisor Cashman. And I think the important thing going back to I've got support here with Supervisor Cashman, who's here to support me tonight. I also have a husband of 45 years this year who has been a really important supporter that is important for this kind of business and public service. He's also one of the toughest constituents in the town of Plattsburgh. He is. I mean, I want to just say that. So just glad to be here. And personally, I'd like to dedicate this evening, as I talk and have a conversation with all of you and my colleagues here, to Janet. And also remember, too, that on the stage, what's important is that I'm not sitting with strangers. So the goal is to reach out to those who serve with you in the same public service arena. So knowing both Patty and Sarah is also important.
And Barb, had you ever thought about running for politics before that presented itself?
There is an inspiration, and I told Tom that I would bring this with me. Back in 1970, I want to transport you now 6,000 miles from Clinton County, and I often tell people I was born in the deep south, so the South Pacific, which is a beautiful island called the island of Guam. So in 1970, I have an aunt, and her name is Concepcion or Connie Barrett, and she ran for the 11th Guam legislature. There were 21 people that served on that legislature. She was the only woman in 1970. And then she ran again for the 13th legislature. It is 30 years. She died in 1993, and so it's been 3 decades. But to put it in context, the committees that she served on, I went back to see where she served. She served on 3 committees at the time in 1970. She served on the Judiciary Committee, she served on the Youth and Children Committee, and she served on the Ecology and Environmental Protection. So fast forward to 2023, how relevant are those committees that she served on? So she is a role model. I also have a cousin who was the first female elected Attorney General on the island of Guam. So Aunt Connie's with me tonight as well. So anyway.
Nice.
Very nice.
Thank you, Barb. Sarah, welcome.
Okay, I'm not sure where to begin. I was on the county legislature for 12 years, and then I was asked back to sit in on a temporary basis. But you know, I never thought about getting into politics until the timing was right in my life. My husband was from Texas. I was from the middle of Illinois. And when he was told that we were coming to New York, being stationed in New York, both of us said, no, we don't want to go to the city. You know, what did we know? No. But when we hit Albany and started north and saw the mountains and the lakes, we said, this is it. This is beautiful. And we lived here for 7 years, and then we got stationed back in Nebraska, and then we chose to come back here. And this has become our home. And we've learned to do many, many things here. You know, I didn't know that skiing was something that, I thought it was something Europeans did. But I know, I'd never seen it before. So, you know, I got involved with that. And, but I gotta, there is something that I do want to tell you, though. My first job, and Tom mentioned it, my first job was teaching physical education down on the Mexican border. And I taught, and it was in an all Mexican-American school system, the San Felipe school system. And I was the PE teacher. Having grown up in Illinois, where there was not a lot of diversity, this was a group of people that I had never, ever been involved with. And I think it is, quite honestly, I think that experience is the basis for everything else that I have done in my life. The acceptance of people for who they are. And that's just something I just wanted to bring. I was, when I was asked to do this, I was cleaning out my computer, getting rid of stuff. And then I found this thing called What I Learned as a County Legislator. And I went, I don't even remember writing this. Well, I must have. But anyway, it said there were 3 rules that guided me in my political career, which I really never thought of myself as becoming a politician. Keep perspective, don't take it personal, and keep your sense of humor. And I tried to always do that. I learned also that campaigning for a political office is the longest interview process you will ever go through. And that there is a dog in every house. And if there isn't a dog in one house, there's 2 in the next. Yeah. And so it was probably one of the most interesting experiences that I ever had. Was I think I went to hundreds and hundreds of homes, knocking on doors and meeting people, and it was really great. Why I got into politics? Well, there's this gentleman, some of you may remember his name, Art LaFave. Art LaFave came to my office when I was running this drug treatment agency and asked me if I would run for office. And I said, well, you know, I think I'm a little busy right now. But I kept that in mind, and I then ran for the town of Plattsburgh office. I did not win that one, but then the legislative position was up for re-election, and I ran for that, and that's when I started my political career. Campaigned pretty hard to get to it. So anyway, it's been a pleasure, and I love this community. This community has been kind to me. When I was first elected as a legislator and I was sworn in, I was also then diagnosed with breast cancer. And so one of the things you must know when you get into politics is you become a public figure. And so it was in the newspaper, and it was on TV. And at first I was like a little taken back, but then, you know, it was the best thing that could have ever happened, because I realized how absolutely caring this community is, and that that people approached me and gave me support, people who I didn't even know. And it also is what started the Booby Sisters, and we're still going.
You are.
Yeah. We are 84 shows, 20 years.
And still on tour.
And still on tour. We have gigs coming up, man.
Fantastic.
Anyway, that's my story.
Thank you, Sarah. Patty, welcome.
Thank you. I got dragged into politics kicking and screaming.
Did you really?
I was completely comfortable with my platform at Coffee Cat. It was safe. You had your little counter. I was approached 3 times. And then I finally said yes. And I know once I say yes, you're going, you know, it's all, I'm an all
Yeah.
or nothing. You're in it, you're gonna go hard. But again, I think, you know, my previous experience, you know, my first job, I was 22 when I started at Clinton Correctional Facility. I was a young girl from Clayburgh, a single mother at the time. And diversity really slapped you in the face hard, like,
Yeah.
and it was the best thing that could have ever happened to me as far as eye-opening. I had 3 bosses, Pakistani boss, Black Baptist boss, and a Jewish boss. And they were the loveliest men in my life. They helped me graduate from Clinton Community College. They helped me with my studies as I tried to further my career so I could get out of prison someday. And so basically then, you know, once your eyes are open, they're never going to shut again. You understand
Yeah, that's true.
their cultures, you learn so much. And I never had that before. So I feel really blessed. So I definitely felt prepared to run, but politics was not ever on my list of things to do. But here I am.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us. So 10 years now, 10 years serving in the legislature. You have a couple more years and then term limits. So your career will come to an end, at least temporarily. You are allowed to run again after you take one term off. Folks can do that, but so you have a couple more years before you will wrap it up with the legislature.
And I would like to thank my one of my predecessors here for, I think it's a good rule. I think term limits, really, it needs to be refreshed.
Yeah.
And as I get older, there's younger views, especially with the issues we're dealing with today nationally. I think it's very important that we move on. You know, so in the meantime, we do, you know, the best that we can by our constituents, and hopefully somebody will carry forward, you know, the very good legislature that we have.
We'll take the torch and carry
Take
it
the
forward.
torch,
Yeah.
yes.
And Sarah, let me ask you, you also were term limited out of
Yes,
office.
I was, but I was also on the legislature when we voted in term limits, feeling that there needed to bring new ideas, new energy into the legislature. So I thank you for agreeing
Yes,
with that, because you are now
absolutely.
term limit. I was term limited too, but I think it was an important thing to do.
And Barb, you don't have to worry about that on town council?
We don't have term limits on the town council board, but certainly it's something to think about. I mean, I think there was a time where term limits were defined by the electorate, by the voters that wanted to keep you there. As an extension of Patty's comment, you know, some of us, I was a late bloomer, so there is still hope for that opportunity, because I wasn't able to maybe think about doing this because before that it was elder care, raising a family, and having a job that was at high stress. So at some point in time, you have to begin to think about passing that baton. And then I think that as 3 women on the stage, I think we want to work hard at cultivating the next generation of leaders. So
Yes.
I'm just thankful that I was elected, re-elected, and re-elected again. But just wanted to kind of give some comments on the term limits.
Good. Well, let me ask you a little more about how you got in politics. Now, you each mentioned that there were people who helped persuade you. Were there mentors or other people who helped you decide that this was the right path, that you wanted to get involved in local politics?
Karen?
You're looking at me?
And if not a mentor, was there a particular issue or anything that got you interested, that when the opportunity came up, you said, yeah, I'd like to get involved, and here's why?
Yeah, you know, I think for me it was interesting. I had a very, very strong background in working in the mental health field. I worked in psychiatric hospitals. My background was in therapeutic recreation. I also, you know, did a lot of administrative work in the Behavioral Health Services North program, and then drug treatment. So my background was very much in the human services field. And I thought that when I got into the legislature, I could help in that capacity. And I guess I did a little, but what was really interesting, and I think what I loved about it, was the diversity of the issues that we dealt with. Because my biggest projects were the connector road and the airport, which really had nothing to do with, my background. But I learned a lot. I know what it takes to build an airport. So, yeah, it was very interesting. And I love teaching here at Clinton Community College. I really did. It was really fun.
And Barb, Patty, any particular issues that got you into politics?
Honestly, no. Once I said yes, I knew that there was going to be a huge learning curve for me. And learning the issues was really my one of the first things I had to do. And, and living, let's say west of Saranac School, you're representing towns like Black Brook, Redford, we're out there, Standish. And honestly, I felt passionate about being a voice for them. There's no cell phone service, there was no broadband, there was no, we're backwards for a reason. So I really felt that I could be a voice. And I don't want to ignore the town of Plattsburgh, Mr. Cashman. So it's really from Katyville west.
Right.
There was a whole group of people that I felt didn't have a voice. And I'm not saying anything about my predecessors. I just think that a lot of the very rural communities were left out in a way, if that makes any sense to anybody out there.
And on the Clinton County Legislature, each area has a vote, and so that was important for you to represent those smaller communities.
Yeah, I mean, for me it was. It's a tougher, because it's a pretty tough Republican area. But I was a local girl. That certainly helps, and everybody knows each other. And at the end of the day, it's not Republican or Democrat out there. It's what Waldron clan is she from? They want to be able to trust you more than a Democrat or Republican.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah.
This is a good place to ask you about that. For you, Sarah, for you, Barb, your party, when it comes to local politics, does the party matter as much?
I'd like to talk about that a little bit, because I was very fortunate to be in the legislative body when it was very, very nonpartisan. The entire 13 or 12 years that I was there, we did not ever have a party line vote. We came close to a gender line vote a few times. There were 3 women on the legislature at that time. We came close to a gender line, but we never had a party line vote. And I think it was because the people that I worked with and that I served with understood that what we needed to do was for the good of this community. And it had been a fairly partisan legislature before we came on, and we made some changes. And I think it's set the stage for future legislatures.
And you were proud of that, having a bipartisan legislature.
Absolutely. We were so proud of it being so bipartisan that it was a pride in doing that.
Does it discourage you to see
Yes.
today how in many ways, and often it's state
Yes.
and national politics, but things are much more partisan?
Yes, very, very partisan, and it does bother me a great deal because, you have to communicate with each other and listen to each other in order to really understand the issues. And I don't think people are doing that today in politics. I think they don't listen to each other and share differences of opinion.
And today, the county legislature today?
Oh, no, we are very fortunate. Parties never come into play. I mean, maybe for a brief moment if somebody wants a power position, but it doesn't last long. But as far as, you know, when it comes to our votes, I truly believe, and thank you for setting the stage, because we continue as new ones come in to set the stage that way too, that we actually really want to do what's in the best interest of the county and the towns that we represent. And we want to help our colleagues do the same thing. So, you know, the Democrat or Republican, and it's 5-5, you know, now.
Yeah.
But it just really, it never mattered the whole time. I've been there for 10 years, and it just, I forget what party my colleagues are, you know, it's just not anything you really think about. Or
There was one time that I wanted to take our show on the road. You know, I wanted to take it around to other places and show them how you could work in a bipartisan way. I still feel that way, especially today.
yeah, I mean, not that there's not disagreements, there are, but it's
Oh,
never,
yeah, oh, absolutely.
It's never about, it's never a Republican Democrat.
It's never party
issue.
lines.
It's not, no.
Yeah.
And is that refreshing? Is that nice for you to see, again, in an era where in so many
Honestly,
other
yeah.
arenas we see partisan politics becoming more of a factor?
It's hard to watch nationally. It's so hard to watch. I mean, you have the far right and the far left, and the 2/3 of us are right here just trying to move forward, you know, and get something done. But it's very discouraging, and
And it's not productive.
it's not productive.
It doesn't improve our lives, and I think probably Patty and Barb and I got into politics to make improvements, to do things to make people's lives better, easier, more productive, all of those things. And I remember I had this one woman, she was upset about a decision that the legislature had made. It was when we had, was it Cape Air flying out of Plattsburgh? And this woman, when we had to change, we changed the Essential Air Service company, and she was very upset, and she called me and she said, my son goes to Boston and goes to college in Boston, and you know, changing this is going to make a big effect on us. And I said yes. She said, you know, when you make these decisions, it impacts on people. And I said back to her in a nice way, I said, every decision we make impacts on people.
And there's very difficult decisions.
Yeah.
There are, yeah. So, anyway.
Let me ask you, Barbara, the town council, partisan politics or?
Well, if I can go back to
Luckily
the
not.
previous question, I think when you're civic-minded, I think, you know, again, I was a late bloomer, but always had civics in the back of my mind. I think the passion that led me to want to serve is there are some complexities in municipal governments, and just trying to understand codes and zoning, assessing, planning community development. And I think getting down to business, which the town is, as Michael would say, is always open for business. No, the lines are blurred. I think we've been very fortunate because we have, I think, a board that is diverse. You know, the historic needle was moved. I was allowed, Meg LaFave, who was on this stage back in 2019, so I want to carry that legacy for her, that it had been almost 200 years when 2 women served on a town council down in Plattsburgh. So the historic needle was moved. The other thing, just to mention, and I just want to say, is I'm proud of my public service, but also as a woman of color, I think that's also important, okay? I think that's important. But that doesn't drive how I lead, and all 3 of us, you know, Sarah obviously is retired, but we're in the policy-making business, and that is something where at the local level, you really got to get down in the weeds at times, and you have to make decisions at a policy level. You have to sometimes feel you're going to say no, and you have to arrive at it by consensus to say yes. So even in talking to Janet, if she was here, those lines are blurred. At least I feel confidently at this point, and again, at the local level, I think it should be. We have high school students that come to our town board meetings, and I think one of the things that happens at the end is Supervisor Cashman just out of curiosity just asked them to figure out whether any of us have what our party affiliations are. And it's interesting to hear the comments from the students as to what they think you're Democrat, Republican, or Independent. And it's a pretty interesting exercise. So, anyway.
And that's good. If you keep them guessing, that's good.
Yes.
All right. Folks, I've been asking all the questions. Anyone in the audience ready to ask a question? Yes, sir.
So it's kind of a two-part question. The base of discrimination and sexism has changed throughout the years and the decades. So how have you kind of experienced those changes? And the second part is, how do you kind of share your voice and your opinion in spite of those issues and those discriminations, et cetera?
Who would like to start?
Okay. When you're talking about the diversity, are you talking about the diversity of gender, the diversity of race?
Well, I was specifically gender in this case, but if you would like to talk on any of them, that is totally
Okay.
as well.
I think, as Barb said, it took a long time for women to get into politics. And there are still some struggles with that. And I think I feel bad, the recent issue that has occurred in, which state is it?
Tennessee?
Yeah, the Tennessee thing, shows some, that we're still living with a lot of that lack of diversity and discrimination. Women, but in taking this back to women thing, women do, my experience was that women do view issues a bit differently than men. And I'm not saying one is good and one is bad by any means. Women tend to look at, and this was from my experience, at things broader and more of how a decision is going to impact on a community-wide basis. And I think often men don't look at the community-wide in their making decisions. They make good decisions. I'm not saying that they don't. But I think that's why it's important for women to be in politics, because women do come from often a different perspective.
Chris, that's a really good question. So sexism and discrimination, I think there are barriers, whether they're institutional barriers or social, cultural. I think I hit on some of those. And sometimes as a local leader, sometimes you wonder if you're making any impact in any of those areas, because I think sometimes those particular barriers, I'm just saying if it's institutional, does that mean, does the woman feel that she can get out there and wage a campaign? Can she afford to do that? Does she know about fundraising? My campaigning experience has been developed through some very savvy male counterparts and learning, because that was important for me to be able to campaign. And you meet some of the sexism and discrimination even on somebody's front porch. That was evident, I think, when I was even campaigning during the pandemic. So I guess I don't want to make a big case about that, but I guess what I'm saying is that I think we have a chance to make an impact locally. Now, I want to give kudos to a couple of organizations, because I try to be strategic with my community service, because it takes time, but we've got the Champlain and Business Professional Women. I've got a representative here who's here to support. The League of Women Voters, and that's just not for women, that's for men. But I mean, the grassroots opportunity for me as a local leader to maybe make an impact at the national level. That's where sometimes I'm not sure if I'm making that real significant impact. But I think the role modeling, and if we get a chance to talk about servant leadership, I think that's a style that I try to do, and I hope there's some questions around that, because it's a style that's not necessarily accepted. But I'd be glad to go into detail. But the voice is important. And the voice has to be done with civility. I think that's what's bothering me if we talk at the national level, is the civility that needs to take place
Yes,
in a town
absolutely.
boardroom when we're having discussions about what we need to do in the policy making. So, I try to bring that with me every day.
I think I'll follow up too. It is a very good question, and because you're talking evolution, so my 59 years as being a female, trust me, most of the time, actually, you're never running around thinking you're a girl, okay? It's not until somebody brings it to your attention that you all of a sudden say, oh yeah, this is a different arena. Now, I know, I'm sure you ladies, especially like I said, I worked 10 years in the prison facility, some real tough jobs, and obviously women didn't belong there. I happened to need the job, so I was very fortunate to, I had a lot of correction officer friends there that huddled around and made sure I was okay. But we're not there yet. We're getting there, but you can see it. There's this old guard out there, strong-holding, really insecure of the fact that we actually might break through. Honestly, this feels to me like another revolution, not in a sense of, I don't want to say in a fighting revolution,
Right.
but more like the 60s. We're back kind of there again. But it's not going to last long, in my opinion. This is going to go away because that old guard is old. They're old. We got young people now. I think of my son's generation. He couldn't even wrap his head around what he's hearing on the news these days. It's a different generation now coming up, and they're the ones that we're going to be passing this on to.
Yeah.
Male or female at this point. I think, I've been working with men my entire life. And I worked with 9 of them, for 10 years, me and 9 other men. So I know their language well, and we don't think ourselves as females, like I said, until somebody may remind us.
Yes.
And
yes.
then we'll remind them, that we do have a voice. We have a maternal spirit. We care about our community. I mean, personally, I have a maternal spirit. I want to make sure the group stays together. I want to make sure, the morale in the county is good. Those types of things matter to me. Workplace environments, things that they may not think of just because they're not made up to think that way. So I think women in politics is seriously important right now.
I do, yeah. I agree.
Let me ask you, Patty, is it disappointing, though, and frustrating? When Sarah was on the county legislature, there were 3 women. There was Celine Paquette, there was Jackie Walker, and there was you. And for 10 years now, you have been the only woman.
Well, except for that.
For a few, that's right, a little stint of, but
I could use a little girl company. It would help out a little bit. So
is it
I love
disappointing?
the men that I work with, though. I love them
Yeah.
dearly. They're wonderful men.
Would you like to see more women, though?
I think yes. I think that in order for that different frame of reference to come to fruition, you need more than 1 out of 10 men to help.
Yeah, yeah.
That's just my opinion.
Yeah, and every level of government is important. And if somebody wants to be on a school board, that is so important. Or someone wants, or you want to work with the town or the city or be in politics. But every level of government is important, and you can have an impact. I've been around a long time, a really long time. Anyway, I will tell you, I'm going to be 79 next weekend.
Wow.
And thank you. And I finally gave up. I think I have to give up snowboarding, but I don't know. I'm working on that one. But when I was a young girl, when I was in high school, and I remember this so vividly, how girls were kept, in these like very safe kind of environments. When PE, when we played basketball, we could only play a half court. And we could only dribble
That's right.
3 times, and then we had to pass the ball to somebody else. I don't know if they were concerned about our reproductive health or what the heck it was, but, it was like, why are we doing this? And so we have come a long way. I love seeing these women in sports that are high achievers, and I'm thinking, why couldn't have I been born later? But anyway, I do think that, women are making progress of being accepted in so many different roles. And I think that's good news. We're not there yet.
And I think women in leadership need to also realize that they can't do everything by themselves.
No.
And it is okay to ask for help. It is okay to reach out. As I look in the audience, I'm hoping there's some, we're down to Generation Alpha now. We have millennials, and I work with a millennial. That's an interesting also part of being in politics is the generational considerations. And like I said before, not all women think that they're going to self-recruit. So that you don't wake up every morning and say, I want to run for town council. But I think if we provide the role modeling to allow you to think about that, and I think it's in our position to go out and canvass and start looking for the next generation of political leaders, and definitely women, but also men. So.
And you mentioned about getting people to run for the school board, for municipal government. Do you worry that people may be turned off because of the national politics we're seeing right now, that may dissuade people from wanting to run?
Yeah, in some of the, we're seeing some of this nastiness, I think I want to call it, in school boards and all over. And I think it's this mindset that people have, that people are unwilling to listen to each other and accept change. Change is hard. Yeah.
And it's coming.
And it's coming. I think it's coming, yeah.
All right, other questions? Yes?
I'm curious if any of you have ideas on how to get more of the younger women involved. Are there ways of approaching it to get more women interested enough in their future?
I think younger women are difficult because they have jobs. They're still with their children. And I'm sorry, but the school nurse still calls mom, not dad at work. It'd be wonderful, but we certainly understand as mothers how difficult it would be to work a full-time job, get dinner, do the homework, all of that, and then, try to invest your time. So I guess
It's a hard one. That's a hard one. And I think some people don't get into politics until they've had enough experiences, and maybe there's a lot of young people who I see as potentially becoming involved in politics, but I think you need experience in life to be able to make the kinds of decisions you have to make in politics.
I don't really have a question, but this is a really important issue, and not just for women. It's to bring young men in as well.
Oh, yes.
I think the important part,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think there's just planting the seed when they're
Yes,
young.
exactly.
Yes.
And then start the conversation, because conversation is there,
Exactly,
is the most important thing, and that's where we're lacking, I think, right now. So, I don't know how community college can certainly help with that, just to
politics is where it starts, and it's becoming increasingly more and more important to have people with integrity, not that you all aren't, but I mean, I'm just saying coming up without just political ideas that they want to get on the
Right.
school board or get on somebody to push their views through, to really think about it, you know, it's really becoming a critical issue, I think, in our country, and it starts right here.
Yeah, and I think that's why servant leadership, I mean, part of servant leadership is diversity of thought, hope, and so I think also just trying a variety of things. I know sometimes I'll say to people who might be aspiring is that don't feel that you can't campaign while you're not campaigning. In other words, while you're in your elected official position, passive campaigning by, I know I tried a couple of years, at least the year before the pandemic, where randomly I would visit constituents. You just have to try different things. I'm trying to also do outreach on a weekly or bi-weekly basis and reach out to some younger people, because when I was a financial services representative, cultivating and developing relationships, it takes a little work, so that patience factor is important, but just maybe some outreach like that. So I think we're all really trying hard to think. And just don't be afraid to fail. Sometimes I think we have some ideas and we don't want to go ahead with them because we think we're going to fail.
Yeah.
I fail all the time,
Right.
and
Yeah.
it has helped me. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Dare to fail.
Other questions?
I have the highest regard for our elected officials because, you know, if you could just get a glimpse into the hard work that's involved, it's not just the legislature meeting or the council meeting, it's the committee work.
Oh, yeah.
And I wanted to know a little bit more about that because I do sit in on the county legislature meeting on occasion, and they have such enormous responsibility. Yes, there's the airport, there's health in the health department, and children and family services, and there's so many huge and difficult decisions on everything. But a lot of that gets worked out in these committees that are, yes, there's legislators sitting on the committee, but there's also folks from the community. And just a little bit about that kind of collaboration.
The committee is where all the fun is.
Oh, yeah. And that's where the work is done, too.
Right, and that's where
the work
the
is
arm
done.
wrestling happens. That's where, you know, these are the tough works where coming together and coming out of committee with how we're going to vote. Yeah, once we're on the floor, we've already decided that in committee. And, you know, and not getting mad at your colleagues or having them not get mad at you at the end of those arm wrestling matches, because it is philosophy at the end of the day, and I respect each and every one of their philosophy. If they're Republican, Democrat, you know,
Yeah.
there are issues that they carry with them, but the committees, those are actually difficult. I mean, especially during COVID. I mean, we did not know that there may be some help on the way. So many things we had to really buckle down because, you know, we did not see. We have to take care of our people. All of a sudden, it became so sensitive of an issue of like, we have almost 80,000 people in this county. We do not know what's going to happen. So there was no spending. Our employees went without raises for 2 years. We felt horrible, and they were stuck working in the most horrendous, conditions. Our health department, our all of the, people that had to work still, public safety. There was, those were really, really tough decisions, that when you really have to think about 80,000 people. And I think that's the first time that, that's what, I mean, we do think about 80,000 people, but this could really, really have tremendous impact on. We did not know what was going to happen.
And you're back meeting in person now, Patty?
Yes.
Or, yes, yeah.
I miss the guys.
It's Barb, Town Council, everyone's back full or hybrid or back in person?
We're back in full force. So the comments have been made in terms of committee work. Town councilors could serve on maybe 7 or 8 committees, but one of the things one of the revelations I've come to is that secret sauce, when someone says, how can you be an effective person in your elected position, and really the secret sauce for me are the people that are in that building at the town hall. The level of subject matter expertise. And I guess what I'm saying is, even though you're confident in what you do, be sure you're confident and prepared when you walk through the doors of the town hall to get ready to interact with either the assessor or the director of codes and zoning or the planning community development director. You've got to move back and forth. There's a lot of cogs in the wheel. As I've said to some of the colleagues there, I'm temporary. By virtue of the election cycle, I could be there and then I could be not there. But the work that goes on inside is where we do all the planning, and I really do have to give credit to our employees, in terms of that. So.
And let me ask you, in case people don't know, how many committees do you serve on? Sarah and Patty, how many committees did you serve on in the county legislature? How much work went into having to attend committee meetings?
I think, well, it's been a long time. So, but I was on, the highway committee. I learned a lot about building roads. I was on the community services committee. I think there were probably four or five different committees, of which all required a lot of information and knowledge for me to absorb. Yeah.
So when you're first elected, you're the rookie, so plan on being on at least 7 committees, possibly 8.
Not the other way around, did you?
No.
And then they see where you're good, where you're good at.
Well, it's interesting bringing that up because I was just learning about committees. I was so busy running, I did not know how it all worked, and I remember it started right away, and the chair had said to me, well, you're going to chair the Children and Family Services Committee. And I said back to him, I said, but I don't like children or families. But it was assumed that I would chair that committee and that was fine. I am obviously just kidding, but it was interesting. Right away, the girl went on the Children and Family Services Committee.
That happened when I was on the legislature too, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but, yeah, so.
And I'll ask.
You gotta do your time.
And I'll ask before we move on. Do you have a favorite committee? Did you discover that you loved one committee over the others?
Personally, I love them all. I mean, that's where I learn the most. I would have to say Finance Committee is the one I do not like.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah,
I didn't like that.
foreclosure season comes in, and I just not want to even be there. So, but I'm sure that's everybody's most unfavorite. But yeah, but the other committees I've served on every committee except for transportation. But in all fairness, we have a lot of roads out where I live, so I have been with Mr. Weiss, who he's our department chair for that, and I know a lot about roads and bridges and potholes and frost heaves and
Yep.
you name it.
Yep. I learned a lot of that stuff too.
That's right.
Yeah. But when I go down the road and I see issues, I know what needs to be done.
Yes,
So,
right.
and
You can still call too.
I can still call and say, hey, you know what, there's a problem here.
And Barb, any particular committee you like?
I don't have a favorite committee. I serve on and I break it down. There's the assessing and codes and zoning and planning community development, personnel committee, the finance committee, and then there are a couple of ad hoc committees. And I think what I like to do is just get out of my comfort zone. So one of the ad hoc committees I'm on is fleet management, and that is an interesting committee to be on because you do have to look at your vehicles and your inventory, and you have to know whether you need to rotate. The pandemic was a great opportunity to learn those lessons and really zoom in. People in the town, sharpened their pencils, and we do zero-based budgeting, and I look forward to the budget meeting. And I do like our finance committee, but it may not be as intense as yours, but I do like the opportunity to just learn the cogs of the wheel. Human resources practitioner, you have to know a lot of your organization and all the ways that the departments interact, and I think so that's why I really don't have a very good committee.
Good. Our next question. Yes.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm listening academically because I'm an academic and I teach here at Clinton. I've been here for 26 plus years and teach human services and sociology. And when I listen to all three of you, what comes to my mind is the way you talk about, Sarah in particular, the interconnections and people making sure that they see the macro picture and how things interconnect. And it reminds me of research because we teach about how little girls and little boys are socialized. And this research has been duplicated. It's not just old research. Every 10 years or so it's duplicated. And what sociologists see is that little girls are socialized in families to play nice and socialized in school systems to play nice. Whereas little boys are taught to keep things close to the vest and win. And little boys are much more comfortable, at least this is what the peer-reviewed research says, in competition. And I think that the strength that is so clear on this panel, this desire to not be partisan, to cooperate, is the strength of women in politics, at least as I've witnessed. And yet it's also to the detriment if we don't teach little girls and as girls grow to be comfortable with competition and conflict. Because when I listen to your stories, I'm thinking, oh, when Barb was saying, do I want to, why not, back and forth, it really comes down to, am I willing to be vulnerable in public?
Yes.
And I think that these outreach, hearing that Mr. Cashman has people, high school students come and ask, but all of these things are good. But in Clinton County, we may have to be a little bit more strategic.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing more diversity in families, right? So families are maybe not socializing girls exactly that way. And there's also individual personality. I certainly know competitive women, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in general, I think we're pushing against norms that we're still socializing girls to be nice and not ruffle feathers.
Yeah.
So I think we need to be strategic on how to teach women coming up that ruffling feathers
Yes.
is necessary to advance.
Yes. I think, Denise, you can still be competitive
Yes.
and possibly what I call positive annoyance.
Yes.
I like to lead that way. And, I brought up Supervisor Cashman's name before, and then my husband to allow to challenge and be able to go into his office and talk about the issues, and him knowing that I don't have an agenda other than a purpose. I've been in the private and public sector, and I think those two have really helped me out a lot, because private sector is, you do have to be somewhat competitive, and I help run my husband's business, and you do have to be an interrupter at times. That's not necessarily where I like to go. Public sector taught me about the slowness of the wheels of bureaucracy. And one of the things that I think the revelation talking up here in the panel is, once you get inside the town hall, you're an insider, okay? Someone said to me, so now you've got all this power and authority, Mrs. Hebert, what do you plan to do with it? But what I'm trying to focus on is that I was an outsider. You get inside and you're the insider and you get exposed to the bureaucracies of policy making and getting things done. And I guess I don't want to forget that I was outside too. And I think those two things, if I can make them intersect, just as in terms of servant leadership, diversity of thought, I mentioned that, you have to create also a culture of trust. You have to be patient. Now, having said that, there are going to be people who are counterparts to me that are going to say that that is a wishy-washy way to lead. That is, and it can be, but I think making hard decisions in human resources, that was something that came with my territory. So making those difficult decisions with my town colleagues, and then going on to another one, generational differences. Meg LaFave and I made a pact together. She was a millennial, I'm a baby boomer, and we had some interesting conversations where we had to get into some raw conversations, because sometimes baby boomers are passionate, but they come across like they're lecturing. And I think she was brave enough to come and tell me that maybe that's what I was doing when I was presenting my side of the argument. The other thing is sometimes she may have been impatient and wanted to get out of the weeds, and I wanted to stay in the weeds, especially if we're talking about employees or something personnel related. Some of those things you can't rush a discussion. You cannot get it done in 15 minutes. So just things like that that I'm
Well, I'll just tag and say that my experience of women in the classroom, like 23 to 35, because I have non-traditional students, and this is something that I feel really confident in saying, is it is unfortunate that as a group, they kind of think that the women's work stuff is done. Okay? And it's just very recently we're starting to see it on the national stage unravel with policy. So I think we do have a really opportune moment right now to tap into that and say, hey, things that you have taken for granted are unraveling. Why don't you, plunge in, jump in, right?
Yeah.
So I guess it's more of a statement than a question, but I think each of you have those moments in time. Barb, you have role models and relatives. You had sports and competition, Sarah, in your training, and competition, and a single mom. But we need to reach out, and I think more strategic ways of modeling servant leadership really is timely right now. And I'd love to see that.
Thank you. And Barb, you mentioned that. That's interesting, the generational difference. Was that, you think that was good, a benefit to have those different perspectives on the same town council?
Absolutely. I mean, there's an opportunity. You can. It's what you make of it. You can collide the generations too. And I didn't want generational collision. I wanted the intersection because, I'm hoping there's some young minds out there or anybody else that would like to talk to any of us at any point in time. But yes, I found that because I took an interest in that in human resources in terms of conflict resolution and communication style. That's another thing I think you have to be savvy about is people have different communication styles. There's some people you're going to meet that want you to be brief, be bright, be gone. And then there's others who really want to get into some more philosophical discussion and more client-centered kind of discussion. So, yeah.
So millennials, Gen Zers, and now alphas. Have I forgotten anybody? Everybody's welcome.
I think it's important too, women that do want to be involved, that it's okay to just be a woman. You don't have to, you don't have to, and I mentioned this the last time too, is the shoulder pads, that's in your suit coats. That, I mean, it's okay to be a girl. You're still very powerful. You're just as powerful. And, just women understanding that they have their own power, and you don't have to be anything other than who you are.
Right. Yeah.
All right, we're about an hour into this now, so let's take a few more questions, and then, yes, sir.
Honestly, I'd like to say hi to Patty. So, if someone thinks about maybe they want to go down this road, what kind of financial obligations does it cost to run? I mean, how much money does it take to run? How much of that is expected to come out of your pocket? Do you get support from the party or any other organizations? Or maybe you could just talk a little bit about, okay, if I want to do this, how much money are we talking in order to make it successful?
What's it take?
If you want to run for the President of the United States, it takes a lot. Or senator or, one of those high-level positions. But I think, when I ran the first time, it took a lot of time and it took a lot of energy. I went to a lot of houses, knocked on a lot of doors. But that was what helped me because I made connections with people. And I think that in local politics, that's what it takes, is it's not as much money driven as it is get out there and work.
And also, correct, I think my first campaign, I spent under $1,000. I had some road signs, but I was running. I mean, I was knocking on doors. I had my little pamphlets, and you can spend a lot of money if you want to do it, get your message out in the newspapers and, the media. There's a lot of ways you can do it. But it doesn't have to take a lot of money, especially in our community.
No.
You can win a race just through grit. And I would encourage, anybody, don't be afraid of that part.
Yeah. And I went to homes that people said to me, we've never had anybody come to our house before campaigning. And it was, maybe, there were only two houses on this long road or something. But I went there. And that's what you gotta do.
And Steve, that's a good question, really quick, because I think that may be also a barrier that some women feel that they don't want to get into politics, is because they may feel that their male counterparts can fundraise better than they can. I mean, if you start getting into some serious, campaigning. And I think that's where we want to demystify the myth, because it does cost, but at certain levels, I would think the county is going to cost more than what I do. So that's where the expenditure for me is the time. And again, I learned from some very savvy individuals how to really do some good campaigning. But fundraising is, I think, as you get up higher, that could be a consideration why women do not want to run for office.
Although, and I think people may be a little surprised, though, by the cost of campaign signs.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. All right.
Need to be frugal, Tom.
Yes.
You get one color, white and one color.
Put them in a good spot, right?
Let's put it that way.
Yes. Other questions? Yes, in the back row there.
I have like a comment on the spending, and I think that with the way that our generation is now, that people may not think that they can run, because so many millennials are living paycheck to paycheck.
Point.
Even making good money, you're still living paycheck to paycheck because of the economy right now. So they might be very discouraged and not realize that it just takes more time than anything, and because they see the big campaigns and everything, that how much Elise Stefanik is spending and fundraising and everything, and think I could never do that. But I think that's part of the issue. People, women and men in this community, in the younger generation, don't know exactly how to get started and how to run. Because I know, thinking about it myself, I couldn't spare that kind of money to have a campaign that was going to cost thousands and thousands of dollars with my own paycheck.
You're not gonna make that much once you get there, so.
I think that's a big barrier that we're facing, especially right now in our community, because we are a much poor rural community. As a teacher, I see it every day, that these kids, where they come from and how little they actually have, so.
Thank you. And John?
Sure, just want to share a comment. Barb, Sarah, and Patty, thank you for your inspiration. Your stories are great. I really enjoyed it today. And just want to comment that seeing where the world is today, it's a pretty frightening place. When you see the news coming out of Ukraine, coming out of Louisville yesterday, it's really time for us to really commit to woman leadership. Because we're in that kind of situation where we need it.
Absolutely.
It's frightening, quite honestly. And your work you've done and how you've contributed to our community in a very positive way is very inspiring. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Tom?
I'd just like to make one comment on something Sarah said right in the beginning when she was telling us what she learned as a county legislator. One of those lessons was don't take it personal.
Right. Yeah.
That's what's been lost in our system. Everything is personal. And that's why we're attacking each other. You summed it up. Don't take it personal. It's part of a process. It's not a personal battle. It's consensus building to get where you need to go.
Absolutely.
And you summed that up nice right at the beginning.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad you appreciated that. Yeah.
And things have gotten more partisan, but do you need to have thick skin? Do you need that?
Sometimes, periodically, I sat in some committee meetings where the men in the committee wouldn't talked over me, and I had to finally stand up and slap the table and say, "Listen, you can't speak over me. I need to express myself, and every now and then, but not often. That didn't happen often.
Not as much. In this day and age, social media?
Pardon?
In this day and age, is social media something you need to develop thick skin.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely,
Yes.
absolutely, yeah.
Thick
Yeah.
skin is very important.
Right, right.
Yeah, and, I mean, I'm sensitive, I'm a girl. But I don't take it personally, you know,
Yeah.
and I love them right through it, so, you know, I mean, I guess,
Patty, I'm sensitive, but I'd like to fight back.
yes, exactly.
All right, other questions? Yes.
Barb, you mentioned servant leadership. I've never heard that term before, so I was wondering if you could kind of talk about it. What does that mean?
Well, in cases, it could be a style of leadership, and then just for me, I think I mentioned a few things in terms of diversity of thought, creating a culture of trust, inspiring people to help you make decisions. And I guess I just want to devote my public service to that. However, just also understanding that, to what Dr. Cogman said, you do have to make tough decisions. And those difficult decisions, you must either surgically dissect what you're thinking about and what you're going to do. But that's why I said some people might think it's a wishy-washy kind of style. And it's also getting away from being self-serving. So you don't have your self-interest. And we're all human, but again, these two ladies also said at the time that you're making these decisions and policy making, you really do have to look at the big interest of the town of Plattsburgh. There may be times where you want to say no because that's your position, but take some time and collect your information and talk to your colleagues so that you can reach consensus. Sometimes getting 4 votes out of 5 is better than alienating everybody, and that's what I mean by servant leadership.
So it sounds like that's the best way to kind of, it might be wishy-washy, but that's how you build consensus and trust to have even more difficult conversations.
Yeah. But the downside is that when you develop some of that is that you've got to remember you got to maintain that trust. And the other thing too is when you're trying to inspire people to lead with you is you kind of want to know, or you don't want to micromanage your departments. I think I try to balance that carefully because you care so much that you want to get your information, but you also need to let people do their jobs. And I think you don't want to, affect the morale. It's just something that you have to. So in other words, if you're promoting that kind of leadership, look at the downside of that so that you can watch yourself and keep in check.
And you talked about, a little while ago, we talked about viewing things differently, women than men. What about unity, defining unity and seeing unity? Do you think women see that in a different way than their male counterparts?
At the town board level where I'm at, I think cohesiveness, no, I don't think so. I'm just fortunate, I guess, but,
Well, let's wrap things up. I will ask a last question. As you look back over your political career, Sarah, you're retired, but Patty, you still have a couple more years. And then Barb, you're still in the middle of your career. As you look back over your political careers and your experiences, have they been what you had hoped for, what you had dreamed they would be? And have you accomplished what you wanted to accomplish, or are you hoping to accomplish more?
I totally feel good about what I did and what I accomplished when I was in the political office. But I also worked with a really amazing group of other legislators. So no, I never compromised my values, although I certainly was open to new things, learned a lot. Yeah, and no, it was very good, and I'm very proud of what I did.
I'll throw this out at the end. Anything you would have changed? Any vote that you later regretted, or anything you would have changed?
Not really. I can't think of any vote that I wish I hadn't made. There were some that were very difficult, but and there were people who were objecting to how we were voting, but the way I voted was based on my facts and the information that I had.
Actually, it was so much more than I expected, and I've learned, a tremendous amount from individuals and just humanity. And I do have a couple of votes I regretted. And I think it was more in the beginning of my career that it didn't feel comfortable. So, I mean, usually your gut knows, but it would go so fast and you're learning so much and you didn't realize what just happened.
That could happen, yeah.
So I think, you know, but I mean, I've been there a while now, so I listen and I read everything. But yeah, to be fair, yeah, there's certainly, I'm times that I said, I wish I could go back, and you can't turn back time. But overall, it's been, you know, yeah, I work, like I said, I work with a wonderful group of men, and we all get along, so they invite me for beers and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And Barb?
Well, when I plunged in, it's like you're denim with some rough edges. So, you know, you have a learning curve that you have to just keep pushing down. And so as far as any votes that I've regretted, I don't think so at this point. That can change. That's the other thing, too. You should be able to change your mind. I know some constituents weren't happy with me sometimes because they did ask me, would I change my mind on a particular issue? And I had to be honest and say yes. I think the thing I look forward to is continuous improvement, you know, and continuous learning. This is really important. One of the things I learned when I was in HR that I use a lot is to assume good intent. So that's something I try to practice every day. And then also I start thinking about stop, start, and continue. So what things should I stop? And I try to look to colleagues to look at that. What should I start and what can I continue? So it's a good journey.
Yeah, it's good.
Barbara, Sarah, Patty, thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you, folks in the audience. You know, I've never been at a forum where all the questions came from the audience and you all spoke up and projected it. It could be Clinton Community College's great Stafford Auditorium. The acoustics here are fantastic, but kudos to all of you for your questions and some well-thought questions and comments. Thank you for coming and participating. Dr. Kowal, thank you for hosting us again for the second Women in Local Politics. We'll try to make it annual, and we hope to see everybody back here next spring, and we hope that Janet will be back with us, and we will look forward to that. So thank you very much for coming. We appreciate it. And ladies, thank you very much for being here with us. You did fantastic. Very.
Thank you.